So Ben and Matt are with me to talk about it this evening as well. Ben, nice to have you back on the show. Starting with you, do you agree with NASCAR's decision to revoke Dillon's playoff eligibility? And do you believe that this sets a new precedent to prevent desperate, intentional wrecks like we've seen taking place here today?
Well, Josh, Matt, good to be with you both as well. I do agree with the decision to revoke his playoff eligibility temporarily. I'll get into that in just a second. But with all due respect, I don't know that I agree with our thumbnail and show title tonight because I don't know what the precedent is now. I thought the precedent was if you right rear hook somebody, you get sat out for a race. And I think Bubba Wallace fans today have every right to be outraged. Chase Elliott fans today have every right to be outraged. What is the precedent now? We don't know what the precedent is. We now know today that apparently you can right rear hook somebody less than 5 seconds after you already spun another driver out going into turn 3. You can do a right rear hook coming out of turn 4, and you can not only keep your victory, but you don't get suspended for that. You're going to go to Michigan, and make no mistake about it, he's still playoff eligible. They took his playoff eligibility away in terms of the fact that he won a race. It's not going to count, but he is still playoff eligible. If he goes out and wins Michigan, where he's had some good runs in the past, he's won twice at Daytona before. He had to use the bumper both times to do that one as well, but he's won at Daytona. He could do it again, and he finished second in the Southern 500 in 2020 at Darlington. So I'm not expecting it. I think where that car is run this year, Richmond was certainly an anomaly. I don't expect him to go out and win any of those 3 races, but I feel better about his chances there than I would at 3 other different tracks to end the regular season. So, and by the way, docking him 25 driver and owner points, so what? So he went from 32nd to 26th back down to 31st. Now, what difference does it make? He's still got to win a race. And if he does, he'll finish minimum 16th in the standings, and I guess they can enjoy their charter bonuses that come with that on the owner's points side of things. I don't know. I think that it's a total nothing burger to take points away, given the situation that he's in right now. So I appreciate, at the bare minimum, that this isn't going to get him into the playoffs. But the message that I've gotten from NASCAR now is that you can do this to win a race. And if you are fine with that win not getting you into the playoffs in a season where, if we're being honest, you've been a 31st, 32nd place car for much of the year, you're not going to win the championship anyway. So if you're fine, if to you winning's all that matters and there's no difference between 16th in points and 30th in points, then you can do this to win a race, and the record book will always and forever show that you won that race at Richmond, and it'll always and forever show that you got to come back the next week in Michigan, because what we thought the precedent was apparently doesn't exist anymore. But you know what bothered me the most was listening to Elton Sawyer when he sat down with Kim Kuhn a couple hours ago, I guess, as the news was coming out. And this is a tweet from Davey Siegel quoting Elton Sawyer and saying, drivers understand where the line is. This penalty shows them, quote, we know where the line is as well, and this is not something that we're going to tolerate. Are you kidding me? You are by definition tolerating this. Yeah. Now, you can make the argument that you're not accepting it. At least you took the playoff eligibility away, so you're not accepting it in that regard, and that he's reaping the full benefits of this victory. But by letting him keep the win and maintain playoff eligibility because you didn't suspend him, so the waiver isn't even a question, and I guess the precedent from Chase Elliott is the waiver would have been granted regardless, but he keeps the win, he maintains his playoff eligibility because he's not going to have to sit out a race. If that's not tolerating this move to win a race, then I don't know what is. So it is very hard for me to sit here today and find closure in what we saw Sunday night, because to me, this was deemed an acceptable move. I mean, this is a slap on the wrist penalty. He wasn't going to win a championship anyway. He still has a shot to get in the playoffs to finish 15th or 16th or whatever the hell that means for his season. And he gets to keep the win. It's just mind-boggling to me. And I don't know what the precedent is now. We can sit here and say, well, a line's been drawn. They know where the line is now. I don't know where the line is now. Bubba Wallace didn't have to sit out a race. Chase Elliott did this. He had to sit out a race. Austin Dillon did it for the win on the last lap, coming to take the checkered flag. And he's going to Michigan next week. I don't understand.
And to that point, in those other instances you speak of, Ben, those guys took out one car, and Austin took out two.
Yes.
I obviously didn't see this live because it was on at stupid o'clock for us in the UK. Sorry, Josh, I know you were well awake during the race.
Too long, my friend.
Or whatever it was.
And then go over
so I'm
time.
not seeing it in,
Sorry.
Yeah, not seeing it in full, but I knew we were going to talk about it even before this news broke a couple of hours ago. So I went back and checked. And for anyone that hasn't seen this, well, I know there's people that tune into us that aren't, up to speed with NASCAR like we are. Austin Dillon was going to win this race with 2 laps to go, I think it was, and he was just about to pull a lap on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Ryan Preece, who was already a lap down. And Stenhouse somehow bundles his way into Preece, which is just a completely random move. I don't understand what that was all about. Ricky being Ricky again. And then we get Ben's favourite overtime. And then this happens, and he bundled the restart, Dillon. He made a cock up of the restart, which he had control of. And then he's in the position where, and he's what we're saying now, he's got 3 races left with 4, including the end of this one. He's got to do something. They're telling him on the radio, you've got to do something. We've heard the clips throughout the last couple of days. And you can use the phrase, he did what he needed to do to win. But that's not the way to, it's just absolute nonsense. He was, as Joey Logano said in the pit lane afterwards, he was never going to make the corner to when he ran into the back of Joey. He just absolutely cleaned through Logano, and then Hamlin ended up getting wiped out in the process. To use a phrase that Josh will be more a favour with than Ben, perhaps, it's just not cricket. This isn't how you go about motor racing. Just crashing into people here, there, and everywhere and especially guys that are already in with Denny and with Joey that are already locked in as well. It just smacks of terribleness. The penalty is, and until you brought that up, Ben, at the very start about the right hook thing, I'd never even crossed my mind that those guys were benched for a week or whatever for doing basically a similar move with Elliott and with Wallace. So he's back next week as if nothing had happened.
Yeah, well, and
the points thing is just silly.
Yes, the point thing is absolutely nothing, Burger. And another thing I think that Elton Sawyer said was that people are going to bring up those 2 examples and say, well, why wasn't he? And he said those happened at 1.5 mile tracks where the speeds were closer to 160 miles an hour.
And?
Well, I don't know. You can go back to Matt Kenseth in 2015. That was Martinsville's speeds, I guess, are even lower than, well, maybe not because that was at the end of a straightaway, but whatever. It's a short track, and it's even a shorter track than Richmond is. And Matt Kenseth got 2 races for that. So I don't. And Denny Hamlin, ironically enough, having been involved in this as well, got on the radio when that happened and said, I just can't get over what this sport has come to, just how bleeped up it is. How do you even crown a real champion now? And that's one of my all-time favorite quotes, because we sat here for 9 years and it's only continued to get worse and worse. And I don't know. And I didn't even bring this up on Encore on Monday because there's, like I said, so many different layers to this here. Isn't this the same guy that the week after Chase Elliott got suspended, he was whining about Austin Cindric supposedly hooking him in the right rear for something that was much more egregious, much closer to a racing incident? And he said, I hope Cindric has to sit out next week. Well, and then he goes and does this. I mean, I cannot wrap my head around the fact that he's going to be racing next week. And I apologize. You guys said my audio was fine before the show started. I apologize to the listeners if the microphone quality isn't as good. I didn't bring my mic today. I'm still in my work office because I didn't think I'd have to come on the show tonight because I was that confident that he was going to be suspended and I could just get my brief thoughts across in the chat room. But apparently I had too much confidence in the sanctioning body here. I had to come on the air tonight to give my opinions because I am just losing my mind at how the only thing we appear to be capable of being consistent on in this sport is inconsistency. I don't know what the precedent is. Nobody knows what the precedent is now.
They make it up as they go along.
Yeah, I'll bring up how you. Good thing I still haven't got into NASCAR. Says, you're not missing anything, not at all. I will go back to a phrase I use regularly on this show. we've bashed IndyCar a lot this year. I've bashed NASCAR in the last couple of months. We had the debacle of the rain at New Hampshire. The race before the break at Indianapolis, the end of that race was farcical at best. They come back. They've got 2 weeks to think about things, and they come back, and this is the way you go into it. And of course, the race was on Sunday, and it's taken till Wednesday to get this out. And we thought Formula One race control was bad at times. And of course, the clip will be seen around the world. They've got their viral moment. It's the Game 7 BS rubbish, and it will get played on the pre-race show next week, and NBC will talk about it, which is their right to do, of course, because NASCAR doesn't have any daily shows anymore where they get to get all this stuff out of the way on TV. That's another story for another day. And then it'll get played, and then if he wins, of course, as you said, if he's got 3 more chances, if he gets through at Daytona, it'll be like Dillon has risen like Lazarus to come back into the playoff mix when he'll only finish 16th anyway, because RCR have been terrible. They just needed to, as you say, this is where we are. Do not do this. Stay at home next week. We'll see you at Daytona, and then everybody goes, okay, that's where we are. But they've not done that.
And if we could bring behind the mic Matthew Owens' comment back up here, because
sorry, I didn't
we
catch
got word right before we came on the air. RCR put out a statement and a press release. They are planning to appeal this, and so I don't know. Maybe we come on the air on Grid Live pre-race on Saturday with more breaking news that the appeal's been granted. And I mean, it's just I don't know. I feel like when certain things are egregious enough, we should be able to use common sense and say. And by the way, people arguing NASCAR, had no precedent. There was nothing in the rule book that said that they could overturn the win or whatever. They put a 13th driver in a 12th driver chase 11 years ago. So don't give me that crap. There's nothing in the rule book that says we can do it. You added a driver to the playoffs off of something that had to do with an entirely different organization. Don't tell me there's nothing in the rule book that has a clause that allows us to do it. You clearly there's a precedent that's been set that you can make it up, and as you go along, to your point, Matt, and they're going to try to argue during the appeal. Oh, Denny actually can't, because fans were doing this the last couple of days as well. Denny crossed the white line, he came up. Well, of course he came up. He's taking the typical racing line out of a corner, mashing the throttle, moving up the track, arcing the corner to try to win the race. And Austin Dillon, if you look at the SMT data, was turning 30 degrees harder to the left than he would have on his normal racing line, because he had every intention to right rear hook Denny Hamlin and take him out so he could win the race instead. And he's still going to get to go to Michigan next week, because apparently there is no precedent.
Tweet of the week. Tweet of the week from Denny. And one of my first thoughts when I caught back up with this on Monday morning when I woke up was, of course, Denny's been involved in this, because, this is just exactly right up his street to be involved in something like this. The RCR tweets as they were disappointed with this, and the tweet of the week from Denny Hamlin was, not as disappointed as I was off turn 4, which is absolutely spot on. I don't really know where we go from here. We're going to talk about Logano. I've got more thoughts on the Logano thing. We're going to get to that shortly, because that's another thing that needs to be discussed. But Jeff Burton said it on the NBC call. He's going to have to hit him to get through going into turn 1 on that last lap of the overtime. And that's exactly what happened. And if we're going to have this on, it doesn't matter where we are, I guess, Watkins, Glen, Martinsville, Richmond, Daytona. If you're in first and you've not got 5 seconds of fresh air behind you, you're going to get moved out of the way. That's not racing. That's crashing. It's demolition derby. It's rubbish. Rubbish.
This is the top level of stock car racing in the world. And we have just sent a message to every kid watching this, to every young late model driver watching this, to every Truck Series driver and Xfinity Series driver watching this, that you can right rear hook somebody on a short track intentionally and get to keep the win. What? And I said this on Encore Monday night. Can you name me a series where they would look at that finish and not immediately say, clear and obvious, there is no way you get to keep this victory? Does one exist? I can't think of one.
I can't think. We've had in other series, definitely that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, Verstappen in Austria with Lando Norris, taking him out, deliberately moving across the track to block him. to stop him getting the win and taking them both out of it. Adam says as well, wait till Bristol and Martinsville, payback is coming for Austin Dillon.
Well, is it though? Because if he doesn't make the playoffs, it doesn't matter. So Joey can keep his anger in his pocket because it doesn't need to come out now if he doesn't make it in the next 3 weeks.
Lindsay says the thing you guys are missing was that there was no malicious intent. 3 is the only wrecking the 11 because of the playoff rules. I think we might still have the 22 thing, but not the 11 thing without the. I think it cuts out the playoffs. PL. I thought it was PI for a second. Without the playoffs, yeah.
With all due respect, Lindsay, I said this Monday night as well. I think in this situation it can be both. It can be like, of course, if you have a regular season, full season championship format, or you don't have a win and you're in format, then there was a lot less incentive. I guess there's still a race win on the line, but there was a lot less incentive for Austin Dillon to do this. You're absolutely right. But it doesn't change the fact that he still had the malicious intent to go down there and right rear hook somebody, which is clearly a dangerous move. I'm sorry. If you're going to try to argue there's no malicious intent, I could not disagree with that more.
It's the fact he did it twice. That's what got me. It was the big one.
And Dale Earnhardt Jr., to his credit, on his podcast this week, because that was the other thing we talked about. Dale would have done this. Dale Sr. would have done the same thing. Dale Sr. wouldn't have been 32nd in points, by the way. I'll throw that out there as well. Dale Sr. wouldn't have gone 50 races without a single top 5 finish to his name. But sure, make the Austin Dillon's the new Intimidator 2.0 comparisons. I don't care.
Definitely.
Dale Jr. even said, "Listen, I can't recall a single time that Dad did that to 2 different drivers on the last lap. He had his fair share of run-ins. He wrecked Terry Labonte at Bristol. It wasn't a right rear hook at Bristol. It wasn't a right rear hook to another driver after he did what he did to Terry Labonte. I guess you could say the Logano incident was kind of like that. But even then, I think Earnhardt was closer to the corner and closer to Labonte than Dillon was. I mean, if you want to try to pass this off as a racing incident, Matt, you said it perfectly. There was no way he was going to make the corner. He drove in there deeper than he would have on any other lap because he had the intent of, if not spinning him out entirely, at the bare minimum, shoving him up the track so that he could move him out of the way and go win the race for himself.
Yeah. Something that's just sprung to mind. What was, two things actually that's just sprung to mind. Firstly, it looked like, to me, if you take a step back a little bit, it looked like one of those challenges on a NASCAR video game. The difficulty is at 200%. You've got to win this challenge to complete the game, but you need to make sure you win. And he did that by going, no one's coming past me. I'm going to win this race, which just looks stupid. That's as a thing. And also, and this was my thought on it the first time I saw it was, because as I say, it was Monday morning by the time I caught up with it, was take a step back and look at that and you go, not, oh my God, look at that. Look what he did to make sure he got in. You just go back, what? It just looks terrible. And another thing quickly, this is something I noticed when I watched the last 5 laps this evening before we came on. There was so many fans on the fence for that overtime. I've not seen fans on the fence like that for an overtime anywhere. Like, they were 3 or 4 deep in places. That's bloody dangerous. Very, very dangerous when you've got bits of car that, thankfully, most of it stayed within the confines of the cars, sort of suspension damage and stuff. But that could have been bumpers in through or up against the fence and all sorts when there's paying spectators there. We know it says on the back of the ticket, motorsport's dangerous, etc. But I don't know, it's only Richmond and it's not Talladega where we've had people up in the catch fence and such like. But still,
it could have
been very dangerous.
Yeah, and Josh, one more thing here, and then we'll get to Lindsay's comment, and then we can move on to the spotter, because I know that was a penalty that everybody was discussing as well. But Matt, you reminded me with the video game comparison. Cole Pern tweeted that over the last video game move, everybody seemed to love, right? Well, they continue to promote that one. That one was outlawed, and I just want to say one more time, I was on the record saying, I apologize, my work scanner's randomly going off for some reason here. maybe that's a sign that we need to move on. But I was on the record saying that move was not acceptable in the long term either. So we'll leave it there. But Lindsay says, I agree the rules are too gray and loose, but the 3 didn't want to hurt the 11 and not for no reason. The 9 and 23 deals were trying to do damage, no other reason, but to cause damage. I don't know. Again, you right rear hook somebody coming off the corner. It should be obvious, in my opinion, that they're going into the wall and you're going to cause damage from that. I'm sorry. I don't see it.
Even Hamlin said in the interview with NBC, he understood why he did it. It's just he didn't want to be a part of it. But Logano, was, threw everything off and went to look immediately to NASCAR control area to have a word as well when he got out of the car.